Okay, Shlosh Grandin before Shlema. So Sharpul Israel. We're in a period of time called the 3 weeks. We call in Yiddish the dry Wochen, and even in English is very dry, very hot. In a time when many of us get hot under the collar, even if we're normally very peaceful people, very easy to get a little bit ruffled and hot and argumentative when things get hot, when we're physically hot and we're not feeling so comfortable. So we find during this time a lot of very serious tragedies occurred to the Jewish nation, 5 of them on Yud Zayin Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, and 5 of them on Tisha B'Av. And this is also called Beina Mitzarim, be in the straits. It's like you're in a very tight spot, and where it's very hard to get through the straits, right, through this narrow little passageway. And it says in the beginning of Eicha, Kol Rodfeha Hisiguha Beina Mitzarim. All of our people who pursued us caught us during this time. World War I apparently started on Tisha B'Av, and even World War II was brewing very seriously. Didn't really hit till the beginning of Elul, 1939, but the winds of war were raging. They didn't start actually till a little bit afterwards, but they were already very, very serious pogroms, etc., which preceded the war itself. And a neighbor who was from Europe, from Poland, and described how, Shalom Aleichem, good to see you. He wrote a book about it actually. He survived it, a whole pogrom that occurred before World War II, because the Polish were trying to show the Germans how pro-German they were. So, unfortunately, their way of showing it was by killing Jews. It's a very serious time in our history, and the Chazal say that the final destruction of the Second Temple was because of sinas chinam, hatred which wasn't for a proper reason. And as we've stressed in the past, it doesn't always mean hating someone outright. Sometimes it's just a small feeling in the heart that I just don't like this person, but you don't really have a reason for not liking me, you just don't like them. And the only real reason to not like a person is because they do averas. That's what the Gemara says. The only real reason for having someone you hate is that they do averas. But even then, they say that we should try to get rid of the hatred by helping them to do mitzvahs and helping them in other ways. Because if a person hates even the right reason, it can develop into the wrong kind of hatred very easily. And therefore, for example, the Gemara says if you see your enemy's donkey struggling, you should help him, right? You should help your enemy. Why? To get rid of your hatred. The Gemara asks, how did you hate him in the first place? You're not allowed to hate any Jew. It's also to hate. It's an issur in the Torah. You're not even allowed to hate a Jew in your heart, even if you don't show it. You're not allowed to hate anyone. So how does the Torah say you saw the chamor of your hated enemy? You don't hate anyone. You're not supposed to hate anyone. How's the Torah even acknowledging that there's a hatred? So the Gemara in Pesachim says that we're talking about a person who did averas. You saw him do an avera, and therefore you're allowed to hate him as far as the avera is concerned. To hate the avera, to hate him for doing the avera. But the Gemara says you still have to help him. Why do you have to help him? If the Torah is allowing you to hate him for doing the avera, then why does it want you to help him to get rid of the hatred? It seems like a contradiction. So the Gemara says, because even though it might start out as proper hatred, but it quickly develops into unrequired hatred. improper hatred. And the Gemara actually explains it a very interesting way. If I hate you, even for the right reason, you're going to hate me back, right? Like we see today amongst the non-religious. The non-religious, especially in the last few years, have become very verbal and sometimes very proactive against the religious because they feel that we hate them, so they hate us back. And that's what the Gemara says. Maybe I was allowed to hate them because they do averas, but then they're going to hate me back. Kamayim apanim el apanim. It's a pasuk in Mishlei that if I hate someone, they hate me back. Even if they just sense that I hate them, they hate me back. And then when they hate me back, then it's it's a vicious cycle. So then it could develop very easily into a hatred which has no basis in halacha whatsoever. So the most important thing is to hate the avera and to continue loving the person. That's really what the Torah is commanding you to do. And therefore, you'll try to help the person to do better. You'll try to help the person in other ways. And like Aaron the Cohen, who helped Klal Yisrael do tshuva in a very roundabout way by helping them, by loving them, by caring for them. Everyone loved him in the end. It says when Moshe Rabbeinu died, not everybody cried for Moshe Rabbeinu because he had a lot of enemies. But when Aaron died, all of Klal Yisrael cried. Why did all of Klal Yisrael cry when Aaron? Because he knew how to be makar every Jew. Every Jew, he had a special way with them. Nobody felt he hated them, even though he was trying to be makar of them. That means I could look at you as doing an avera and not be happy with that, but I can react in a way that shows love and breed more love in return. And that's the example we have to follow. So this is a time where we're trying to, as the Chafetz Chaim says, replace sinas chinam with avas chinam. To replace the problem with a solution. What was the problem? People hated each other without a proper reason. Even if it's a very subtle hatred. Even if it doesn't show on the outside. So we have to also show love to all Jews. Again, even if you don't show it on the outside, but in your heart, you have to love all Jews. You have to love every single Jew, no matter what he looks like, no matter whatever his situation is, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant. And even if there are times when you have a right to hate him, right? Because maybe he did something against you. Maybe he's not a person you want to really spend a lot of time with. Doesn't say you have to spend time with him, but you have to love him. In the same way that sinas chinam could be subtle and in your heart, avas chinam also could be subtle in your heart. It has to be something you work on. You work on loving every Jew in order to, at least for the reason that we know that that's what will bring the third Beis Hamikdash. And if I know that that's the reason, so even if I'm not doing it for the highest reason, that I want to really love every Jew because there's a mitzvah of loving every Jew, but at least I'll motivate myself that I would love to have a third Beis Hamikdash. I'd love to see the Kohanim do their avoda. I'd love to have a korban that could get rid of all of my averas. And even if I don't bring a korban, every day there was a korban tamid that got rid of averas. And every Rosh Chodesh, every Shabbos, every Yom Tov, there was a korban musaf that got rid of more averas. And so Yerushalayim is called Klilas Yofi. It's the most beautiful city. Why? Because everyone who was there didn't have averas. Imagine an entire city without an avera, because everyone was there. If they had an avera, they just went and brought a korban and got rid of it right away. So even if that's our only motivation, we have to try to feel a love for every Jew. Even if it's a Jew who's unpleasant, even if it's a Jew who's done something wrong to us, of course, if you can rectify what he's done, if he's done some kind of damage, you can talk to him about it. But it's your feeling in your heart that we're talking about. But I think the part of the problem is we have this. I found when I started thinking about this topic that we often have misconceptions. For example, if I have to be b'shalom with every Jew, does that mean I have to always give in to every Jew? Does that mean every time someone says something I have to agree? Right? In a way, it feels that way sometimes. Because as soon as I start disagreeing, we get into an argument, and then often nobody feels good about it at the end. The Gemara actually says that Torah is supposed to be fought over. Right? The Gemara says that it's called a milchama. Right? The learning of Torah is like a milchama, the Gemara says. We're nasim oivim. We become oivim. Oyev is an enemy. Right? And we know that when we go into a beis midrash, we often hear people arguing and yelling and screaming. Sometimes it even gets a bit violent, right? Banging, and sometimes picking up a stender, and who knows what else, right? But the Gemara already talks about that. The Gemara says that's fine. But nasim ohavi, at the end they have to be ohavi. That's very interesting because the word oyev and ohev are very similar words. Right? You have ohev, aleph, hey, base, which of course I normally think of the root of being hav, which means to give. As Rav Dessler says, you can love someone by starting to give to them. The more you give to a person, the more you love them. That's why mothers love their children so much, because they're always giving to them, that they naturally have this love for their children, and they give everything to them. But oyev, you take the hey, you make it into a vav. Right? So in a sense, you're taking the love and you're diverting it. And if you say the yud is part of the root, then you're making the hey into a yud. In some sense, they're related because the Gemara makes a play on the words. It says when we're learning, we're oivim zelazeh, we're enemies. But as soon as we finish, we're supposed to be ohavim, nasim ohavim, as if there's a small switch. You just have to make a small switch between when you're arguing to afterwards you make up and you're friends with each other. The Gemara brings an example of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, who often had very serious arguments, as we know. But the Gemara says they were still friendly with each other. They would still marry each other's children and so on and so forth. Unless there were actual halachas there were certain halachas that they argued over where they couldn't actually intermarry on those particular halachas issues, but generally speaking, they learned to get along with each other, even though they disagreed vehemently with each other in learning or other issues, but that did not prevent them from loving each other. So learning Torah should be the perfect workshop for learning to balance our relationship with other people. That we don't have to be yes men and just say yes every time someone says something, right? But we don't have to just argue for the sake of argument either. Just like in learning, we shouldn't just say no or argue because we want to just argue. We want to find the emes. We want to try and find the truth. So if someone's saying something that doesn't seem to us to be true, we have to question them. But the reason why I'm questioning is not because I don't like them or because I want to show them to be wrong or I'm trying to defeat them. Therefore, at the end, I can become an ohev again. It doesn't at all affect our personal relationship.